My next patron question is from Morgan, who wants to know if a Warner Brothers animated show still holds up 30 years later. The 1990s were a milestone for Saturday morning cartoons, like Tiny Toons and Animaniacs, yet there's one I feel that gets overlooked too often. I'm curious to know your thoughts on Taz-Mania, and does it deserve to be as highly regarded as the other mentioned titles? While it's true that Taz-Mania does not seem to get as much attention as other WB animated shows from the time, like Batman and the Spielberg-produced cartoons, it's certainly one that provided plenty of enjoyment. It's just a bizarre concept to take a cartoon character known for communicating in grunts and spits and give him his entire series, and yet the writers pulled it off. Taz-Mania was developed by Tom Ruegger, best known for Animaniacs, so it's little surprise it had a similar sensibility. Although a large amount of credit should also go to Art Vitello, who wrote most of the episodes. He had previously directed on Tiny Toon Adventures and later played a pivotal role in the Tick animated series. So he's someone who knew how to bring a zany quality to this cartoon set in Australia and featuring all kinds of funny characters. Of course, a key component is Taz, and how he bounced off the various characters. They found a lot of comedic mileage out of this growling animal interacting with a bunch of talkative characters with sophisticated speaking patterns. In contrast to the Taz from the classic Looney Tunes cartoons, who was an adversary to Bugs, this Taz has more of an innocence and excitement about the world around him, and that made him strangely endearing. Although I certainly had nothing against the one in the Bugs Bunny cartoons, my childhood self did prefer this version of the Tasmanian Devil. Jim Cummings also played a key role in helping Taz carry the show, with his great timing and understanding how to voice this version of the character. While there's a lot of emphasis on cartoon sight gags and slapstick, and a lot of that is very funny, the voice actors are also important in making the show engaging and humorous. Like the decision to have Taz's father sound and act like Bing Crosby. It's just a bizarre idea to go with that voice for your main character's father, and yet it suits him perfectly, whether you know who Crosby is or not. The same goes for the rest of his family. The notion appeared to be to take the typical 80s or 90s sitcom family, like you might see on Alf or Boy Meets World, and then insert the Tasmanian Devil in there. So you get sitcom stereotypes like the laid-back father, the talkative mother, the teenage sibling with an attitude, and the energetic youngest child. And they managed to make it work, partly because of the juxtaposition between Taz and his family. The various other characters who populate the ensemble also leave an impression. Ones who always stuck out to me were the two Platypus brothers, whose fast-talking style and use of big words always meant a good time when they shared the screen with Taz. There was also a young boy who kept trying to hunt Taz, and you can imagine how successful that usually was. Of course, the show certainly featured its fair share of pop culture references, especially of the 90s variety. However, like many of the shows created by Ruegger, they were very cleverly woven in with the characters and their situations, and with almost a satirical bent to them. One episode that stood out to me even as a child was one where Taz's younger brother imagines him as a xenomorph from the Alien franchise. I did not see the Alien movies until my teenage years, and yet somehow I picked up on this reference, which I guess is a credit to how ingrained in pop culture that series is, but it also shows how cleverly the directors and writers inserted these references into the show. The episodes often moved at a really good pace, so the jokes zipped by at top speed, and there was a decent variety. Sometimes Taz would be the butt of the joke, and at other moments the joke was on anyone who tried to deal with him. As for why Taz-Mania was not as popular or as well known as other 90s WB cartoons, I think it just got overshadowed by the Spielberg cartoons of the era. Taz is a fun character, but how can he compete against the Warner siblings, Pinky and the Brain, and Buster and Babs Bunny? I do have fond memories of watching Taz-Mania on Teletoon, but let me know in the comments how often the show ran on Cartoon Network and other Turner channels in the United States. Warner Brothers also took forever to give the first season a DVD release, and then the second season did not arrive until 7 years later as part of the Warner Archive collection. Streaming-wise, Taz-Mania is on the Boomerang streaming service, but it's apparently never been added to HBO Max. That would be one way to increase its awareness. In any case, Taz-Mania was a really entertaining take on this classic Looney Tunes character and inventive way to bring him to the 90s. Thank you for your question, Morgan.